Welcome, listeners, to the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. As you may know, we cover a bunch of topics centered on asset management and reliability for manufacturing facilities. We share insights directly from the professionals who are in the field, talking with plant leaders, developing asset management plans, and coordinating those next steps for reliability success. In this episode, we'll speak with Keith Mobley, who is the content creator behind the monthly e-newsletter, Reflections on Excellence. In each monthly publication, Keith highlights one of his new laws of manufacturing excellence. Don't worry about trying to understand what this means right now, because we're going to learn more about this in just a few minutes. Now let's get the conversation started with Keith Mobley in Reflections on Excellence, Mobley's observations of highly successful manufacturing facilities. First and foremost, Keith, welcome to the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. I know we're really excited to have you on and to kind of talk about this e-newsletter that comes out every month, and you're the genius behind it also. Before we really get into it, can you please just tell us a little bit about your background?
I'll be glad to. I started off as a reliability engineer and have never, ever totally left that profession. But I had an aspiration coming out of college. I wanted to make corporate level VP by the time I was 30. Was successful doing that, but the reason we were able to get there was simply because I started off with a God-given talent for problem solving. And that was seen early on in my corporate career, and because of that, I was able to fast track up to Executive Vice President and COO at 30. Since that time, I've actually been out for the second half of my career trying to help other clients achieve world-class performance, or as many of my not necessarily friends say, trying to create a perfect company in an imperfect world. I still to this day don't understand why that's a bad thing, but that's a brief thumbnail. Of the 51 years, it's almost equally divided, about half in corporate America and the other half in consulting, living out of suitcases.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And now I'd like to move right into the e-newsletter, this Reflections on Excellence. So this is a monthly email that began around 2011, in which Lifecycle Engineering sends to subscribers who want to hear directly from you. So tell me about the style for this newsletter and kind of the content you write about.
Well, let me give you a little background first. I was, and I don't know how else to say it except I was conned into it by my peers here at Lifecycle and some of my clients, or I really prefer to think of them as friends around the world. The laws themselves actually started as a joke. When I was talking to clients about the things that they needed to do to improve or to be better, I started using the rules that I live by as an individual, and the rules that I think most everybody should live by. And they started naming them Mobley's Law. There was a TV series called Burke's Law on about that time, and I think that's where it came from. But the style actually is as I like to tell people, it's just the ramblings of an old man. I'm not the creator of most of these philosophies. Many come out of the Bible. Aristotle is actually the author of a number of them. It's philosophies I've adopted to help guide me through my life. But they are just observations. It's things that I see on a regular basis. It's things that frustrate me, and I'm sure frustrate many of the people that read the articles. And I have a lot of fun with them, and hope that the readers have a lot of fun with them too.
So let's talk about the ramblings of an old man, as you put it. Last time I checked, you were at 49 laws, published laws. Are there any laws that you've written that especially stand out to you?
Not really favorites. There's a few that get me in trouble. One is I never make the same mistake twice. And unfortunately, I used that with my wife not long ago when she asked me, if I die before you do, you are going to get married again, aren't you? And without thinking, I said, you know my law, I never make the same mistake twice. And, so no, I don't really have a favorite. But the general theme, if you go back and really look at the 74 or 72 that currently exists, soon to be 73, the general theme is about people and treating people fairly and treating people the way that they should be treated, and the benefit of really letting people achieve their goals. But I didn't intentionally make it that way. It just seems to be the central theme of all of it.
Let's talk about one of your earliest laws that you wrote on. I'm specifically referring to law number 2. Kind of the number 1 I read, that was that first email, the first communication was kind of setting the expectations of the Reflections on Excellence series. Mm-hmm. So, but in the second law, you begin detailing observations from the field. So can you tell me in brief about law number 2, which states there are no silver bullets?
Well, general observation, and it seems to be getting stronger and stronger as we have become a society looking for instant gratification, the easy answer. Look at the easy button that you can get from Staples. All I have to do is hit the button and my problems are solved. I share just a story with you quickly on it. The first time I went overseas, I happened to be going to Saudi Arabia to do some training. And in my slide deck is a slide or a series of slides that talk about there is no such thing as a shortcut. There are no silver bullets. And I was really concerned about how it would translate because I was going to be using an interpreter in Saudi Arabia. So I sat with the interpreter and explained what I meant by silver bullets. And he immediately got a big smile on his face. He said, "Oh, you mean magic sticks." So what I found out is every society, every country in the world has an equivalent saying. We're all looking for the easy answer. My generation was raised that if you hit an obstacle, something was in your path, it was up to you to find a way around, over, under, or through it, not to just stop and say, I can't go any further because. And this is generally the gist of what we're talking about. I gave several examples in there of clients that we had a chance to work with that it became epidemic to the point that the companies almost went into a total state of being immobile. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't go get better. They couldn't go right. They couldn't go left. They couldn't go backwards. It was just total inertia. That's the general gist of that particular one.
Now that we talked about one of your earliest, now let's go. I know you said you had 72, 73 laws right now, but you have 49 of them published right now as we speak. Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to talk about that 49th law, and that's physical assets mean nothing without empowered employees. So what is this law talking about?
Well, this is probably one of my greatest frustrations, and has been for probably 30 years. In corporate America in particular, the entire focus, if you talk to a CEO of a plant and say, what is your most prized or most critical possession? What are your resources in the plant? Invariably, they're talking about the capital equipment sitting on the floor, the manufacturing equipment, and the infrastructure to support it. What they don't seem to understand, and as I said in the article, is just it amazes me that the experts and the CEOs can miss it that far. If we don't have motivated people, if we don't have people who want to operate the equipment correctly, want to maintain it correctly, then it doesn't matter how much you spend on the equipment, how good it is or how bad it is, you're not going to be successful. Corporate America invests nothing in its people. They set up cultures that are diametrically opposed to them achieving their full potential. It's almost like we want to tie one hand behind their back and one leg up so that and then still expect them to do the job. So it was my frustration speaking on this one. We've had a couple recent examples with clients where, this is the obstacle we're trying to overcome. We're trying to help the leadership team really understand that what they're going to see very, very shortly is that literally are going to come in one Monday morning and there's not going to be anybody there. We have a very mature workforce in this country. At the last estimates I saw, we're probably going to lose something approaching 50% of the current workforce over the next 5 to 10 years. If you look at the colleges and universities or just the physical population, there's nobody coming behind to replace. So all the state-of-the-art equipment soon is going to be sitting fallow just simply because there's nobody to operate and run it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's I read somewhere similar to that is the knowledge loss that's about to occur because of the baby boomer generation getting ready to retire, and maybe there's not that knowledge transfer set up in place. And so I definitely understand where you're coming from. I was reading down through a list of all the laws you've created, and there was a bunch of titles in there that I really enjoyed reading through. There were titles like show them the numbers and the performance will follow. Especially like that being a baseball fan, so I kind of got that Field of Dreams reference. And then also, what will your legacy be? And another one was, you don't know what you don't know. That's just to name a few. But the one that stood out to me was law number 14, and that is, if you change nothing, nothing changes. Seems like a simple concept to grasp and understand. As part of my profession is to interact with clients and project managers a lot. I hear all too often about this resistance to change. So can you provide a little bit detail what the message was for law number 14?
Yeah, I'll actually share a little story with you. My wife was reminding me of that law not too long ago. I was sitting watching, as I'm sure everybody else is, all the rhetoric that's going on in the current political campaigns. And quite frankly, I was fuming. I've never seen adults act so childish in all my life. So I'm saying, why do they keep putting them people on television? Why are these dummies eating up my day? And she looked at me and said, don't you remember your law? Don't sit there and complain about it. Nothing changes unless you change it. But that's a true statement. If you look in your work group or work in your peer group or at church or wherever, everybody's complaining about the culture or the environment that's around them, but they're waiting for somebody else to change it. And if you wait for somebody to stand up and change, why should they be any different than you? If you want something to change, you need to be the trigger. You need to be the person that stands up and says, look, this is not the right way to do it. We need to do something different. I have seen people take it upon themselves. Well, for an example, I was in a high-speed manufacturing plant not too awful long ago, and an operator, an hourly worker, had a few free minutes. So he was taking it upon himself to go and help his other operators that were having trouble. He was changing the environment just because he was taking that extra effort to go help somebody else. And you've heard the phrase pay it forward?
Yep.
Same concept. If you do something nice, somebody else will do something nice. If you do that often enough, your whole world's going to change. So that's the way I feel. That's the way I believe. That's the observation I see of people who are willing to be natural leaders and step up and be the trigger for change.
I write about a lot of this, again, resistance to change. Why do you think there's so much resistance when it comes to changing a maintenance environment, trying to change from a lot of this is going from your reactive state to your preventative stage, all this stuff like that? So,
well, there's a couple reasons. One, no matter how bad your environment is or no matter how bad your life is, you're comfortable with it. You know it. If you're a member of a maintenance team, for an example, or an operating team, you know where you fit within that team. You know if you're the alpha or the beta or wherever you fit. So anytime you start talking about doing something different, there's always a certain fear factor. It's fear of the unknown. And that's the first thing you have to do to be able to actually affect change is be able to, and I saw a videotape one time that did it better than anything else, is a guy diving blindfolded off a high diving board. Because that probably has got to be the most frightening thing in the world to do something like that. With me, you'd have to blindfold me to get me to do it. But that's the gist of it. It's just I'm afraid I don't know what it's going to mean to me, and that's what corporate America always forgets to answer. Is you've always got to answer it the what's in it for me at every level. The other thing that people don't understand is change is a very personal thing. I mean, you could be trying to change the organizational culture in a 5,000 person plant, but you got to do it one person at a time. I mean, each person has to feel comfortable with the change or as comfortable as possible. So it's not so much resistance as it is fear. It's just fear of the unknown. Now, I will tell you, I'll share one other thing with you. Surprisingly enough, the real pushback or the real resistance to change in corporations isn't the hourly purpose. It's not the bargaining unit. The first-line supervisors is the most fearful group and the group that pushes back hardest because a lot of them don't really have a feeling of self-worth anyway. So they're convinced that if we come in to do RX or somebody comes in to do lean or whatever the magic formula is, they're going to discover they're adding no value and then their jobs will be in jeopardy. So that factor also. It's always, we have a gentleman here, one of our principal group that coined a phrase years and years ago about the soft stuff's the hard part. So the people, changing the culture, which appears to be soft, that's easy. I just send out the memo and they're going to do it. That really is the difficult part of any transformation.
Interesting. So, Keith, by your admission, you're in the latter stages of a very successful career.
I didn't say that.
Well, off mic, you might have said that. So how many more lulls can we expect from you? I know I mentioned that there's 49 as of right now, and you've got about just under 30 more out there, right, that are on its way. So after 72, 73, is there 500 more to come?
Well, I guess I'm going to have to perpetuate what I got started. So what I've been trying to do is come up with some new observation each birthday. So my mother just passed away recently at 94. My great-grandfather and great-grandmother lived to be almost 99, so I can't really answer the question, but as long as I am able to think and write, I will continue to look for other rules out there. And as I said, I'm not the inventor or the originator of these philosophies. I have a client who's very well read, and he said, you stole that from Aristotle. And I said, I know where it came from, but he was right. I'm going to try to continue that as long as I'm capable. I think it shows I enjoy writing. People seem to enjoy what I write. So as long as I'm physically and mentally capable of doing that, they'll still be coming.
Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap up the episode there. Just if you want, do you have any parting words for the listeners out here? Or you...
Other than I truly appreciate every opportunity that I get to share ideas with people that are out there struggling with the same things that I've struggled with my entire business life. I thoroughly enjoy the feedback from the articles each month. I tease with the people here that I always know when Derek sends them out because my iPhone goes crazy. But hopefully the podcast will give me a new audience that I can share ideas with. I would obviously love to hear back from them as well. My whole mission in life is I would like to pass it on. I was lucky when I was first coming out of college. I was rather brash and extremely cocky. I had the biggest ego God ever created. And I worked for a gentleman named Claude Miller, who was my boss. And Claude saw something, I guess, in me, and he made me an offer. He said, I will tell you and teach you everything I know about being a good engineer if you'll make one promise to me. And the promise was to pass it on. So, I welcome opportunities like this to let me pass on what little I've learned in 72, soon to be 73 years.
Well, once again, Keith, thank you so much for being on the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. It was great to have you on and get that insight from you about the Reflections on Excellence email series. And for listeners, if you'd like to subscribe and start receiving these laws, the Reflections on Excellence email newsletter, go to the show notes. I've included a link on there of how you can go and register and start getting those emails next month. So with that being said, we're going to end the show now, and we'll catch you next time on the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. Hey, listeners, one more thing before you go. If you have any feedback for the show, or you have maybe some suggestions for upcoming topics you'd love to hear about, we'd like to hear from you. So there's two ways to get in contact with us. The first is on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @LCE_today, so be sure to follow us. And then the other way is to email the show at podcast@lce.com. Once again, thank you for joining the show, and we look forward to more episodes on the Asset Reliability at Work podcast.